Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to share with you what Tom Brady's greatest roast of all time can teach us about success. So I just watched the greatest roast of all time, and it was a huge event based on COVID and everything else and sort of the general tenor of the way people operate nowadays. The amount and the number of roasts have drastically decreased. So this was a really big event because they hadn't had a major roast in a long time, and certainly not one with somebody like Tom Brady. So they had every celebrity. It was in an absolutely packed arena, and it was really hilarious to watch. For me, have grown up a Patriots fan, and so I've always had a lot of admiration for what Tom has done on the field and his success and everything else. I suffered through all of the lean years, if we want to call it that nicely, as a Patriots fan, as a kid, when they had, Grogan and Eason and they couldn't win more than a couple of games. And even when it seemed like they were successful, they would somehow find a way to blow it and choke away whatever lead or whatever chances they had at winning anything. And so we suffered as Patriots fans for a long time. Anyone in the newer generations thinks, of course, we're spoiled because the Patriots have done so well. But the fact of the matter is, it wasn't always that way. And of course, Tom Brady is considered at this point the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, statistically, based on what he's done with 7 Super Bowl titles, including 2 different teams, it's pretty hard to dispute that. But regardless, he's one of the top couple to ever play the game at the quarterback position. And so, it was kind of a really interesting and unique situation to see an athlete like that, and an athlete of his stature, and that close to the end of his actual career. I mean, he just stopped playing, volunteered to be roasted, especially when there's been so much dirty laundry aired that everybody knew sort of what Tom was going to be targeted about. There have been scandals when he was playing, there's issues with his personal life, there's all these other things. And so, you have to be pretty brave in order to go on stage in front of a national, a giant audience live, and then on national TV, knowing millions of people are going to watch this. But if we sort of look a little bit deeper into it and we go a little bit more behind the scenes, you can see that there's actually something that's really shrewd about this particular move for him as a career move. And so, regardless of what his actual motivations were for doing it, there are definitely some lessons that we can take from it as entrepreneurs and just as human beings in general. But I mean, going through everything as a Patriots fan, the good, the bad, the ugly over the years, it was really nice to enjoy the incredible success during the Brady era. And obviously, he became the quarterback at the center of a lot of talk, because when you're that successful in any, sort of sports field, you polarize people. What ends up happening is the fans of your team love you and think that, you are this, larger than life figure that can do no wrong. And ultimately, everybody supports and loves. If you are against him, or he is a rival, or you root for another team, then you absolutely hate him, because the fact of the matter is he costs you championships. So about the only people that don't hate him are probably Giants fans, since the 2 Super Bowls, or 2 of the Super Bowls he lost, were actually to the Giants. Everybody else couldn't stand him, particularly all the AFC East people. And I have a lot of friends that are fans of other teams. Some of them are in our division, some of them are not. It doesn't even matter. They can't stand him because he won so much. And that's totally understandable. I've always felt that way about the Yankees with Derek Jeter and all those guys. Never liked any of them. They won too much for my liking because I'm a Red Sox fan. So there you have it. At any rate, I thought it was really brave of him to get up there, but I also think it was a brilliant career move and a transition. So beyond just being sort of a funny event, I actually think that there are a bunch of lessons that we could take also from this roast that apply to us as entrepreneurs, and of course in our lives too. I mean, anything, if we think about it really, and we distill it down. If there's a business lesson, it generally is a life lesson as well. But let's talk about some of the lessons that are applicable to business based on what we saw in the roast. I mean, the first one, and this isn't something that's often talked about in sort of the realm of the business, business tips or advice or anything else. But the first one is humor and humility. Even in the midst of success, maintaining a sense of humor and humility is really, really important. I've seen people that have achieved a level of success and all of a sudden become a different person. They start to treat people badly, they start to believe their own press, and they start to think that they're above caring about what anybody else can do. And invariably, I have to say, in a lot of those cases, I found that those people ended up in a situation eventually where they needed people again, and it was kind of embarrassing because they had to come back around and sort of grovel and beg for people to support them when they weren't very nice to people when they were at the top. So it's very easy to be nice to people and be, humble and everything else when we're in a situation where we need something. It's a lot more challenging when we don't need anything, when everything seems to be going well, when all the lights are green and we're, super happy and successful. It's easy to forget about people. It's easy to believe we're too important for people and do all those other kinds of things. But those are critical mistakes that we can make, because the fact of the matter is we're all interdependent. I don't care who we are or what we do. Tom Brady was interdependent. He couldn't throw and catch the ball. He couldn't play defense against the other team to prevent them from scoring. So yes, he had to do his job, but without blockers blocking for him, he has no time to throw. Without receivers who can catch the ball, without a running back who can keep the defense honest and keep them off his back all the time, and without a defense that can stop, and without a coach who can draw up all of these strategies to win, even though they weren't always the most talented team that they faced. So the fact of the matter is, it took everybody to be able to do that, and recognizing that and having a bit of a sense of humor and humility is really crucial. In business, being able to laugh at ourselves and acknowledge our imperfections. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying to get to an end result. And that can foster better relationships. It can be better relationships with our customers, with our employees, and our partners. When we insist that we're always right, we polarize and alienate people. So the interesting thing with Brady in this particular situation is, I think it was a genius move because he's transitioning into broadcasting. So he came from being an NFL player, right? And as a player, it's all about intensity. It's all about single-minded focus. Those are the most important things. You could be aloof, you could be distant with the media, and in fact, as Belichick always sort of preached, that was the recipe that they preferred. Because the more you say, the more it gets scrutinized, the more it gets picked apart. The less ammo you give anybody, whether it's the public or the media or whatever else, the less there is to talk about. They can assume things, but nobody really knows. And so you could be sort of close to the vest, you could be aloof, you could be distant, you could do all of these things and say very little. And that works as long as you perform. The reason that Belichick could get away with being grumpy in press conferences and dismissing the media and all that other kind of stuff is because they flat out won. When you start losing, the questions become a little bit more difficult to dodge because now you're getting pressure from ownership. You're getting pressure from the fan base. If you're winning, people will forgive all the rest of that stuff. They don't care if you don't really give a press conference, just keep winning games. And so for Brady, that really worked. That recipe of sort of, he had as tight a public image as he could, but he wasn't trying to be friendly or warm with everybody. He was just trying to be a competitor and stay out of anything that was going to generate sort of buzz or politics or any of those other kinds of things. So in general, he tried to do that. In broadcasting, it's a completely different scenario. It's a completely different game. Now it's about being light and jovial, right? It's about your personality. That's all that matters. Yes, your subject matter knowledge and things like that. But one of the reasons that people love Peyton Manning as, a commentator and stuff like that is because he's accessible. He's friendly. He's warm. Whether you like him or not, as a personality for TV and for, talking about games, he obviously has the subject knowledge, but he also has the personality. And that's sort of the mesh that you need in the broadcasting booth. If you're too stiff, no matter how much you know, it's actually really difficult. I remember Belichick recently just did, because he doesn't have a coaching job, he just did a stint on a show where he was breaking down the draft and everything else. And the comments that I read after his performance was how amazed everybody was by how candid he was about all these candidates. You have all these kids coming out of college, and there's all this hype about what they're going to be able to do in the NFL. And almost all of the guys that do the analysis, their critiques are more like soft and sort of careful about what they say. And they really focus on the strengths of every player. Well, Belichick, even for the number one pick, didn't pull any punches. Whatever weaknesses he thought he saw, he mentioned. But he also was sort of open and approachable in a way that people hadn't really seen him. He was funny in a way that people hadn't seen him because they're used to him being a coach. And that was actually the pervasive feedback and sort of a day after analysis of all, and everybody was raving about how good he was. And there you go, right? It's his personality. Everybody knew that he had a great grasp on the game and the ability to break down film and all this other stuff. But could he translate that in a way that was accessible to viewers where they'd want to tune in? And he did. And Brady is now trying to do the same thing. He's been seen a little bit as stiff and a little bit like uncomfortable or awkward. And so by engaging in this roast, he allowed his personality to come out a little bit more. Some more openness, vulnerability, approachability, and warmth. Those are all really important traits as a broadcaster. So by doing the roast, he was able to show those traits, which can help edit and adjust his image in people's minds as he transitions. That will help serve him well going forward. A second thing that we can take from the roast is resilience. This is a really important quality in anybody, really in life in general, because we don't get from one end to the other in life without hardship, without struggles, without problems. No matter who we are, no matter how blessed we may feel in our lives, the fact of the matter is, it can be rough. There are days, there are times, there are circumstances that we're going to have to work through that aren't going to be comfortable or easy. And it's important that we are able to work through adversity and keep going. Brady faced a lot of criticism throughout his career, even when he was winning. At the very start of his career, obviously, he was basically laughed at the combine, and then he was drafted 199th. That's not really a ringing endorsement of a guy that you're excited about for his career. And then even after he started winning, well, they're cheating, they're filming other people's practices, they're deflating footballs, they're doing all these things to try to get ahead. So even when he was winning, and even when you could see what he was doing on the field, on video, people would still try to find ways to minimize and minimalize what he did. And so, but being able to stay focused and resilient and not let that affect you to a point where it impacts your performance is not always easy. And he was able to do that really effectively and stay single-minded and focused and resilient. In business, setbacks are inevitable. Again, no matter how meteoric our rise is or how much of a struggle it is to get out of the starting block, it doesn't really matter. It's that we know that adversity, we know that challenges and obstacles are coming, so it comes down to how we respond to them that ultimately matters. If we can embrace those challenges and find ways to bounce back from failure, that's the key to long-term success. And in fact, not only does that show that we can do it, but it actually strengthens us each time. The old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, there's truth in that. When we don't let something like that defeat us and we say, we're going to keep going regardless, that makes us more and more powerful because we gain confidence and strength each time we're able to work through something that's a challenge. Brady was the 199th draft pick. He was lucky to be drafted at all. He had one of the worst NFL combines of any player ever. and he looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy in the photos. I mean, it was terrible, right? Didn't look like an athlete. Yet when he was picked, he had the strength and an inner belief to tell Robert Kraft and the owners of the Patriots, this is the best decision that your franchise has ever made, drafting me. I mean, that's ballsy. That's a big deal to say that, particularly when he had the odds stacked against him that he would ever play. Guys drafted that low oftentimes never even get a chance. And not only was he drafted that low, but also they already had a quarterback. It wasn't like, oh, well, now we need to go find a quarterback and he's going to get to compete. The idea was Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback, and this guy was just somebody they're going to throw on the end of the roster. He may be cut by the end of training camp. But he in his heart knew differently, and he worked his tail off to make sure that it was different. And to his credit, he was prepared when that chance came, and it was a fluke. But Bledsoe got hurt. He came in and he said at that time, I'm never giving this job back. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. The third lesson that we can take from it is brand management. Whether we are a personal brand, whether we have a business, whether we have, whatever we're doing, right? We need to be able to manage that brand and make sure that we create the right image for it and everything else. So Brady, by participating in the roast, it was a really smart strategic move to manage his public image and brand, to make him look softer, more vulnerable, and all these other things, and have more of a sense of humor, things that he's been knocked for in the past. So now you go out and you show the world, no, look, I can do this too. Similarly, if we have a business, we have to carefully manage our brand. We have to make sure that the image that we project is consistent with what we want it to be, and that we align our actions and our communications with those values and the target audience. So that way it's uniform and consistent. If we are, all customer focused on day one, and then on day two, we don't care about the customer and we're doing something else, it's going to create a very mixed impression, and that's not going to create a consistent brand image. And that's going to make it more difficult to succeed and to scale. If we're consistent and we are deliberate with the way that we do that, and we make sure that we do it in a proactive way, we're much more likely to create the brand and the image that we want, and that is going to translate into growth, scaling, and success. The fourth lesson, and this is true obviously of any sort of sport, but it's true in business too, is that teamwork is really important. This wasn't a football field, this was a roast. But the fact is, Tom Brady didn't stand up there and talk for 3 hours. Despite being the focus of the roast, he had to rely on the fellow roasters that they were going to be able to create an entertaining and successful event. I mean, ultimately, really, the pressure's on them. If they don't come up with good jokes, and look, not every speaker was as good as the others. Some of them were excellent and super funny and entertaining the whole way. Some of them struggled a little bit more. There were some surprises. There were some people that we thought were going to be really great that were Some people that we didn't expect much from that crushed it. And so that's fine, because again, it's the team. And on any given day, any one can be the one who steps up and performs. But the fact is, as a collective whole, that's what was required to make the event successful. And they did. They knocked it out of the park. I mean, I thought in general, it was wildly entertaining, and it was a blast. It was 3 hours long, and yet it seemed to go by in an eye blink. So it was super successful, super entertaining. And in business, obviously, we need effective teamwork and collaboration. In order to achieve any goals and overcome any obstacles, no matter how strong we are as the entrepreneur, as the leader of it all, ultimately we're going to rely on other people, customers, suppliers, marketing people, our team, outsourcers, whatever, in order to get the job done. The fifth lesson that's really important, and I think it's really important for business nowadays, is adaptability. The ability to adapt to different environments and challenges is absolutely crucial, obviously for athletes, but obviously for businesses as well. By Brady showing up for this roast, he showed that he's adaptable and open. It might have been hard to hear some of the stuff that people were saying, but he knew how important it was, and he did it anyway. And so being open to new experiences, it expands your own frame of reference, and it expands the way that people see you. So those are qualities that can benefit businesses also, as we all navigate changing markets and consumer preferences. Look, the only thing that's constant out there is change. And that change seems to be coming at an increasing pace. So the more adaptable we are, the far more likely we are to be able to survive and thrive in that kind of environment. And the sixth thing is audience understanding. You know, we all cater to an audience of one fashion or another. If you're an athlete, you have an audience, right? And if you are an entertainer, you have an audience. And if you are a business or a brand or, some sort of purveyor of goods and services, you have an audience as well. And a successful roast requires an understanding of the audience's preferences and sensibilities. How do you create jokes that land if you don't understand who the audience is and what they know and what they don't know? So you have to have that understanding. And businesses need to know their target audience in order to effectively tailor our products, services, and marketing efforts and our branding and imaging and all that other kind of stuff. So the Tom Brady roast serves as a reminder that success in both sports and business requires a combination of skill, resilience, humility, and the ability to connect with others. There's no doubt about it. So the takeaway here is that while most of us won't achieve the kind of success on the football field that Brady did, we can aspire to do it in business and life. It serves as an important reminder that despite being the best that's ever played quarterback in the NFL, Brady isn't relying on that to carry the rest of his career and life. Instead, like every high achiever and winner, he's looking at the next step and figuring the best way to set himself up for success. By staying humble and being willing to adapt, we can all look at what we want to accomplish or achieve and be realistic and honest about our best path to get there. There are valuable lessons everywhere that we can use in our businesses and our lives. And Tom Brady's greatest roast of all time is another great example.